Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Iodine Crisis. What You Don't Know About Iodine Can Wreck Your Life, by Lynne Farrow. Foreword by David Brownstein, M.D. Narrated by Suzie Althens. Publisher's Note: this audiobook includes bonus material, including a glossary and appendices. Please visit Tantor.com and type Iodine Crisis into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page, then, under the supplemental content section, please enter the access code HEALTHY, and then click the Unlock button to access the bonus material. The code should be entered in all lowercase letters. Truth has to be caught, not taught. The best preparation I've come across is an open mind from a deep desire to live fully, an innate trust in ourselves or God or the universe to see the commonly unseen, to hear the commonly unheard, and know the commonly unknown, that we may take action. This preparation blossoms with the camaraderie of like-minded individuals who share their best, knowing our paths are individual. Sharon Williams Prawl. Although every precaution has been taken to verify the accuracy of the information contained herein, the author and publisher assume no responsibility for any errors or omissions. No liability is assumed for damages that may result from the use of information contained within. Forward. The Iodine Crisis: What You Don't Know About Iodine Can Wreck Your Life is a much-needed book. Lynne Farrow has written an easy-to-read book that will help many who suffer from common medical ailments, including fatigue, brain fog, thyroid disorders, and breast disease. Ms. Farrow's description of the benefits of iodine therapy makes for compelling reading. Furthermore, this book describes the long history of iodine usage in medicine and why iodine has fallen out of favor with conventional medicine. Lynne describes her own journey from beginning ill to obtaining good health. After a myriad of complaints, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She gives her first-hand account of her experiences with oncologists and other doctors. Lynne was not satisfied with the information her conventional doctors were providing her. They could not answer her questions about why their recommended treatment plan would be the best option for her. Being a journalist, Lynne did her own research into breast cancer and found that iodine deficiency may be a big missing link into why so many women are being diagnosed with cancer. This book describes that journey and presents the information about iodine and breast cancer that anyone can understand. There is a plethora of research relating iodine deficiency to breast diseases, including breast cancer. In fact, the research dates back well over 70 years. Yet conventional medicine is stuck in their model of surgery, chemotherapy, hormonal therapy, and radiation, all of which have done almost nothing to change the course of the illness in over 70 years. In fact, the only thing changing over the last 70 years is that more and more women, nearly 1 in 7, are being diagnosed with breast cancer. After finding the research relating iodine deficiency to breast cancer, Lynne took matters into her own hands and started supplementing with iodine. She immediately felt better and had many positive health benefits, which she describes in the book. After this experience, Lynne was off to the races and began her quest to inform people about iodine. This path led her to found Breast Cancer Choices, Inc., which I have referred many patients to. The most striking part of this book are the numerous case studies. From fatigue to psoriasis, headaches, and cancer, people have sent Lynne their personal story about how iodine therapy improved their health. Many of the stories may seem unbelievable. However, they are not to me. I have been prescribing iodine for well over 10 years. I hear similar stories from my patients on a daily basis. Unfortunately, for most patients, their doctor has no knowledge about iodine therapy. In fact, most doctors think iodine is a dangerous substance that should be avoided. I should know. I have been writing and lecturing to doctors for years about the benefits of iodine. I can assure you that it is difficult to get a doctor interested in iodine therapy. They don't seem to understand that iodine is an essential ingredient. that life itself is not possible without adequate iodine levels. Over the last 40 years, iodine levels have declined over 50%. The consequences of this decline are severe, including epidemic increases in illnesses of the breast, thyroid, ovaries, uterus, and prostate. Unless conventional medicine devotes its vast resources to searching for underlying causes of these illnesses, we will continue to see suboptimal results with their therapies. Conventional medicine has truly failed us all in its lack of concern for what is actually causing this epidemic rise in illness. It continues to be stuck in a diagnostic and treatment mode. Ultimately, we will not make consistent and definitive progress against these illnesses unless we understand what the underlying causes behind them are. I feel the large increase in chronic illnesses could be explained by deficiencies of essential nutrients, hormonal imbalances, and an increased exposure to toxic elements. The resources section of this book tells you how to test for iodine deficiency and how to avoid problems when taking iodine. I hear complaints from some of my colleagues that iodine causes side effects. They are right. Anything, iodine therapy included, can cause adverse effects. However, the correct use of iodine is not associated with too many adverse effects. The information that Lynne has written in The Iodine Crisis can teach you how to minimize side effects with iodine. These are the same steps I recommend to my patients. I believe this book should be on every bookshelf. The information found in it can help you and your family avoid a preventable health problem. I highly recommend this book to anyone interested in improving their health. David Brownstein, MD. www.drbrownstein.com. Author of 11 books, including Iodine, Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It, Overcoming Thyroid Disorders, Salt Your Way to Health. Introduction. Everybody thinks they know what iodine is. Everybody's wrong. Earl Foley. Iodine deficiency wrecked my life. For years, I endured headaches with brain fog so bad that I lost my driver's license for speeding through stop signs. I slept so much my family called me Rip Van Winkle, and I could no longer work full-time, even with caffeine and painkillers. I went from teaching college full-time to working as a journalist part-time. I grew overweight from an undiagnosed thyroid disorder, and finally, when I thought my life couldn't get worse, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. By some turn of fate, iodine came into my life at just the right time. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, a doctor I ran into casually at a medical conference, mentioned iodine for fibrocystic breast disease. I was intrigued but skeptical. After all, iodine? Surely she didn't mean that brown antiseptic bottle in the medicine chest. What was iodine anyway? Didn't we get enough iodine from iodized salt? Here's where the medical detective story starts. I decided to research iodine in the most conservative way. I started with the bounty of medical studies buried in the National Library of Medicine. Then, I ratcheted up the investigation and hunted down old and out-of-print medical books. I acquired antique iodine products from eBay, some with the instructions still intact. When a pharmacist's ledger, dated 1901, went to auction, I snapped it up. Sure enough, it was filled with countless iodine prescriptions. Records of iodine medicine stretched around the globe, going back 150 years as a universal medicine, and further 15,000 years in its earlier form as seaweed. Archaeology records documented how prehistoric peoples hoarded certain seaweeds. In hopes of solving the mystery, I began creating an iodine timeline to recreate the series of events leading up to the time iodine vanished from common use. My intention was to recreate events leading up to the disappearance of iodine. Why didn't somebody speak up when iodine suddenly went missing from the medical arsenal? The plot thickened when I discovered iodine was called dangerous by a research duo in 1948. Their opinion was contradicted by all the previous years when iodine was used liberally for everything from syphilis to breast cancer. No matter. Somehow, iodine's historic benefits were suddenly snatched from the medical textbooks and largely banned from human research. Why? Who stole iodine? Why did iodine-fortified bread also disappear in the 1970s? Could something in our environment be working to purge iodine? Why do people excrete half as much iodine in their urine now than 40 years ago? Is there a conspiracy here? Or just goofy negligence? While I was sleuthing the mystery of who stole iodine, I concluded I'd researched enough to determine that iodine was safe to consume in larger doses than the government-published daily requirement. One morning, I started the day by swallowing 50 milligrams of Lugol's iodine tablets. Boing! My brain came to life. Brain fog vanished. In the months that followed, all the other conditions plaguing me disappeared. My energy improved, and my weight normalized. I was no longer so cold I needed to wear 2 pairs of socks. Even superficial things improved. I used to slather my dry hands with hand lotion day and night. Now I can't imagine why my hands ever needed extra moisture. The iodine experience seemed too good to be true. If iodine was so great, why didn't everybody know about it? How could one cheap nutrient reverse so many conditions? How did I get so iodine deficient anyway? I had always eaten seafood and iodized salt. What happened to the iodine in my food? Where was it going? Then I discovered the newly minted Iodine Project, founded by pioneer iodine doctors Abraham, Brownstein, and Fletchos. Here was the mother lode of iodine detective work. The doctors were already on the case of iodine deficiency and had been quietly and carefully piling up documentation. On the internet, the first iodine experimenters started to appear. More doctors familiarized themselves with iodine and tried it themselves. Online groups formed to discuss and investigate taking iodine. So many people reported benefits and swapped information that we tried to publish frequently asked questions to lay out the information. We created online resources to help those new to iodine. Predictably, skepticism reared its ugly head with online hecklers predicting that, since iodine was a poison, soon we would all die. Some reported temporary side effects, but no one could argue with success stories and the reversal of profound medical complaints. How many others had iodine supplementation helped? When more and more websites and doctors began to report the benefits of iodine, we began to realize a grassroots movement had emerged challenging the current theory that iodine was toxic. My detective work uncovered evidence iodine had been used in one form or another for 15,000 years. The long medical anthropology of iodine validated its effectiveness. Iodine wasn't alternative medicine. It was traditional medicine that had been lost. The plot thickened again when I discovered the anti-iodine element, bromine, was added to flour at the same time iodine was removed, in the 1970s. Iodine disappeared just as bromines came charging in. Besides bread and flour, bromine chemicals became an environmental hazard as they were added to mattresses, foods, and other consumer products, purging much of our dietary iodine. So, what do we have? A perfect storm for an iodine deficiency crisis. How did the perfect storm scenario manifest? For starters, thyroid and breast disease skyrocketed between 1970 and 2000. Lower iodine levels mean IQ levels dropping and obesity rates rising. The iodine crisis made us sick, fat, and stupid. Think this conclusion is theoretical? Ask the people besides myself, who are all three, sick, fat, and stupid. Many of their stories populate this book. The stories show exactly how people have benefited from iodine, whether it's a little or a lot. History tells us when you let people speak in their own words, a revolution begins. Thus, the many first-hand iodine reports carry the message better than any second-hand description could. Read them. The personal stories will touch your heart. In my role as director of a nonprofit that investigates iodine as a healing strategy, I get emails from all over the world with stories about iodine. Wendy Farrow, no relation, from Canada, a patient in the 1980s of the late iodine investigator Dr. W.R. Ghent, discovered our website, and we were able to put together lost stories. A Russian immigrant even contacted me about how iodine was inhaled in Russia to keep germs from respiratory tracts when traveling. People email me before and after photographs, thermograms, and mammogram films. The success stories keep piling up. We can't let the stories of the iodine movement and its founders be lost to the vapors of history. Someone had to write about how the movement started and how it changed the way we think about arbitrary medical consensus. I've done my best to piece together who did what and when. When Dr. Guy Abraham launched the iodine movement, he was unaware of the significance of his feat. Many of us who are the beneficiaries of his revolutionary thinking believe the Nobel Prize is not good enough for him. But we are willing to settle. Lastly, The Iodine Crisis was written because those interested in iodine need a place to find the frequently asked questions and the answers that have developed over the years. The Iodine Crisis, What You Don't Know About Iodine Can Wreck Your Life, serves as a patient-to-patient guide. Lessons learned on the barricades. The information contained in the book makes no pretense of being medical advice. Please take the reporting in the journalistic spirit with which it is intended. Spread the word. Lend this book to your doctor. Let's continue to learn from each other. Part 1. Finding the Iodine Solution. My Journey. Chapter 1. Childhood Curiosity and Discovery. Study hard what interests you the most in the most undisciplined, irreverent, and original manner possible. Richard P. Feynman. When I was 10 months old, my parents rented a bungalow at the New Jersey shore. They set me on the sand and gave me a yellow plastic shovel. Dig, they said. That was all I needed to stay transfixed for over an hour, digging in the sand, looking at the waves roll in, watching the water mysteriously sink into the sand as streaks of plant life piled up and sand crabs scurried. I remained so entranced that my parents later told me they worried I might be slow. Every year we came back for 2 weeks, and each year I grew more curious as my little legs carried me farther. Eventually, they gave me a yellow pail for collecting my finds. In New Jersey, we don't call the seashore the beach. It's called the shore, as in, let's go down to the shore. This is because the shore is more than the beach of crashing waves and suntanned bathers. The shore is a terrestrial wonderland with the bays and inlets wandering into curious backwaters. Follow a stream of salt water, and you find tide pools and salt marshes filled with birds and plant life so ornate, humans could not imagine them without seeing them firsthand. With my magic yellow pail and shovel, the earth opened up to me. When I grew a few years older, going for a walk at the shore meant I never knew where to direct my eyes. What was the embarrassment of gifts deposited at my feet? The bird eggs, the seaweeds in more shades of green than I had ever seen, the intricate seashells and edible mussels tangled in sea lettuce. Why did some seaweed look like red hair? I still remember what being close to the ground felt like, examining each bit of sea-driven mystery in my hand. "You mean I can keep this shell?" I asked. "Can I take the seaweed home?" How could any object so precious and magical be free or just left out in nature for the taking? Looking ceased being enough. My father started turning over what we found along the beach. When he turned over shells, sand crabs would scurry. He would turn over rocks and find cases of eggs. "The Indians ate these," my father said, when I dug up a clam. "You can eat that," he said, when we found bladder-wrack seaweed. "Lots of vitamins." I learned an important lesson from this second step of exploring. You didn't need to restrict yourself to looking, then moving on. You could turn over shells, look under rocks. Active participants can learn more than mere observers. My parents encouraged my curiosity and brought me a small golden book titled Seashores, which I memorized without realizing it because I couldn't stop looking at the pictures. From the title, I learned that the things I brought home from the shore weren't just things, but a vast system of living beings. Where did all these shells and seaweeds come from? How did they fit together? The book taught me that a curiosity needn't be idle or instant, that it could take you on a long journey and open up far-ranging worlds. If it were possible to radiocarbon date the beginning of my love affair with curiosity, I would write the date my parents put seashores in my hand. Little did I know that my childhood love and obsession would lead to my eventual success in pursuing the iodine mystery. Childhood training pays off. Curiosity did not kill the cat. Fast forward several decades. As a grown-up, my obsession with all things marine persists, but I could never predict a childhood of sand digging would reinvent itself decades later in a mission to learn about iodine. Learning about anything always puzzled me. I never knew the right way to learn, so I just waded in and tried to connect the dots. This served me well in my academic and journalism careers, where I discovered a learnable process called fact-checking, finding the sources of information. Wise mentors schooled me in how to ask better questions and how to push forward further to ask questions of questions. Asking, "What's the source and function of this information?" became a skill I honed, a habit, even a reflex. These skills served me well. That is, until I lost them. As a young adult, I was not well, and in my 30s, I began to feel worse and worse. Headaches, which had been a problem since my 20s, suddenly became an everyday occurrence. I went to a series of headache clinics around the U.S. A series of other diagnoses came in: hypoglycemia, adrenal weakness, hypothyroidism, chronic fatigue, candida, multiple chemical sensitivities, ovarian cysts, fibrocystic breast disease. I put on extra weight. I felt cold all the time and was a challenge to live with because I was always hungry or looking for my vial of Darvocet. The chronic, mysterious complaints became very isolating to me because all my family members and friends seemed healthy. But in the various doctors' offices I visited, I met a lot of people like me. Their individual complaints may have been arranged in a different order of priority, but there were a lot of sick people out there searching and not getting results. Some very candid doctors said they didn't know how to treat us. Although they meant well, I grew frustrated with them. On TV, every illness came with a dramatic diagnosis and an instant cure. Why couldn't these doctors find the answer for me? How many patients were out there coping, day to day, with no hope in sight? Meanwhile, I tried to impersonate a healthy person, both socially and in business. Here was the stopgap solution. I only picked jobs where I could control the amount of time I spent in public. My full-time college teaching job only required 3 days a week, but even that proved too intense with the requirement of being on to give lectures and then work one-on-one with students. I would come home and fall asleep at 6 o'clock. My family called me Rip Van Winkle. Anyone who has chronic illness will understand you lead a secret life, arranging your business hours around rest opportunities, and finding excuses for missing weddings or other social events. When I was working as a journalist, an editor phoned, offering me a lucrative writing assignment that required flying to London to cover a major 2-day media event. I was too embarrassed to say crossing the Atlantic twice in 3 days would exhaust me for weeks. So I chirped, "Sure," into the phone before I realized what I had gotten myself into. There would be endless standing around and walking. Sensible shoes wouldn't cut it. How would I endure standing on my feet for 2 days? Could I fortify myself with Darvocet for the headaches and caffeine to keep me going? That was as far as I got with the plan. The next night, standing in the departure line at Virgin Airlines, I began counting the hours until I would be back home, lying on my own living room couch. My first day in London, I woke up in the hotel room, walked into the bathroom, and promptly broke my toe by stubbing it on the toilet. I saw stars from the pane. Alone, lying on the bathroom floor, nausea swept over me for 10 minutes until I composed myself. The hotel called a doctor who bandaged me up and ordered, "Stay off your feet." But the temporary physical setback provided surprising advantages. When I went to press gatherings, I was given preference. Walking around with a big bandaged toe meant I got to sit while the other reporters had to stand. The sore toe gave me an adrenaline surge and made me feisty. When I shouted out questions at the press conference, I always got answers while the burly and pushy types were ignored. One reporter resented this and complained that Toe Girl was getting more questions answered than any of the others. My big bandaged toe had turned what I thought would be a sow's ear into a silk purse. Brain fog alert. A few years later, I complained to several doctors that I felt underwater. The doctors called this condition brain fog. One doctor told me, "There are things worse than brain fog." Easy for him to say. This frustrating mental impairment was worse than the headaches or fatigue, because thinking was the only thing I had been trained to do. I used to be able to think privately between naps. If I couldn't think straight, I couldn't write. My brain fog caused several friends to yelp when I drove unaware through red traffic lights. I got so many traffic tickets, the state revoked my license and mandated me to attend bad driver's school. Even now, when I read my own story, it seems unbelievable. But one day from my pre-iodine days reminds me how bad brain fog can get. I had made an appointment with a respected integrative physician in New York. The day of the appointment, I allowed extra time because, as anyone with brain fog knows, you tend to get lost. I was living in the city at the time, and all I needed to do was take the subway straight downtown from the Upper West Side to Midtown. A no-brainer. Still, I allowed a full hour extra time. I dressed carefully in a blazer and slacks, applied lipstick, and headed out of my apartment building for the half-block walk to the subway. What could go wrong? As I descended the subway steps, I looked down to the bottom of my carefully picked outfit. A pair of fuzzy pink slippers peeked out. Embarrassed, I turned around and returned to my apartment for actual shoes. Once more, I headed for the subway for the train downtown. I still had plenty of time until my appointment, so I stopped in a luncheonette for a sandwich. But when lunch arrived, I couldn't pay for it, because I had forgotten my wallet. The waitress brushed off my second embarrassment of the day, telling me I could pay the next time I came in. I was relieved, but my confidence was damaged. If I couldn't get to the doctor's office without 2 screw-ups, how was I going to find my way home? I entered the Midtown office building and took the elevator up to the office. I checked in with the receptionist and headed for the restroom for a bathroom break. At least I had arrived early. I applied lipstick again and primped, ready to make a good appearance, hoping not to look as goofy as I felt. When I returned to the full waiting room, a white-haired man of about 80 looked at me with alarm. "Miss," he said, "you have a hanger in your jacket." All eyes turned. Confused, I thought he meant I had left a dry cleaning tag dangling. I reached up and felt for the back of the jacket collar. Oh no, it wasn't a tag. The elderly man was right. A wooden clothes hanger poked from under my blazer. How could I have spent over an hour walking through New York City wearing a jacket with a hanger still attached? My face went red. This signified a new low. I removed my jacket and placed the hanger on the office coat rack. I tried to assume the demeanor of a normal person as I thanked the man and took my seat. But a sinking feeling came over me. What next? At least I wouldn't struggle to explain to the doctor what I meant by brain fog. I would just describe my day so far. I didn't know what to try next. My brain didn't have the juice to figure out a strategy. Life decided for me. Chapter 2. Things Worse Than Brain Fog. Science is the belief in the ignorance of experts. Richard P. Feynman. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. After years of cystic breasts and countless needle biopsies that turned out benign, the last one finally came up positive for cancer. Crap. Now I could not keep impersonating a healthy person. I had to
Sample complete. Ready to continue?